Well, it's 5:30 in the morning where I'm at, and I can't sleep, so I thought, I'll just do a video. So anyway, Tom Brady and Gisele Bundchen. I have not done a video on these two ever. I've seriously considered doing a video on Tom Brady because I'm fascinated by him, not because of the football, because he seems to have achieved some kind of state of mind over matter, where by force of will and determination and daily disciplined practice, and I'm not just talking about on the football field, but I'm talking about that entire health regimen that he and Alex Guerrero have designed. And I guess, Tom Brady has a team of people to keep him in top shape. He has a personal chef, predictably, and trainers. But anyway, but his main trainer, the guy who came up with the TB12 method, his name is Alex Guerrero, and he's controversial, and there's some stuff that he believes that a lot of experts, nutrition experts, for instance, think is strange. But at any rate, you can't deny that Tom Brady, as one article put it, is some kind of walking science experiment in longevity. And I have to say that I find football entertaining. I like to watch. I start watching usually at the playoffs because that's when it starts to get interesting for me. When there's not really a lot at stake, I get bored. But the playoffs, when there's a lot at stake, I start really watching. And then by the time the Super Bowl rolls around, usually I'll watch. I don't care about Tom Brady's record in football per se. I'm interested in the fact that, like I said, the guy seems to be a walking science experiment in how far we can push the bounds of longevity. And I mean, without, scientific pharmaceutical intervention. I mean, what do I know? Maybe the guy is pumped up full of drugs just like Lance Armstrong and all the other guys cycling. But anyway, the point is, I have a lot of respect. I have gained a lot of respect for what Tom Brady has been able to do. And as someone who is entering middle age myself, even though I know I look a little younger than I am, but as someone who's entering middle age myself, oh, there's my cat. Come here. Yeah. Really annoying in the video. As someone who's entering middle age myself, I have a lot of respect, profound respect for what he's doing. And so there's a big part of me that wants him to keep going just to see what the guy can do. And I feel like he has proven himself. Obviously, he has proven himself. And I feel like the guy is doing something so sort of unique. I'm not talking about football. I'm talking about what I just said, right? That he is doing something that's unique and interesting and, I don't know, that's cool. And that very, 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 very few people in life do. And there's something to be said for that, right? And I think there's certain allowances that need to be made for that. I'd like to see how many years the guy can play. However, I'm not married to Tom Brady. And, what do we really know about these people's lives, honestly? But what's being reported, and it's not just what's being reported, okay? But I've been following the situation for a long time because I've always had a kind of an interest in a psychological interest in some of these celebrity marriages, right? It's how I got into the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, actually, celebrity relationships and celebrity controversies. And I have been observing Tom Brady's, marriage from afar for a while, and he and Gisele actually have done a number of interviews over the years where they have addressed this very deep schism between them about if and when Tom Brady should retire. And so it's not just the reports that are coming out now that indicate that Gisele has basically, the tabloids, in Page 6, they like to say that she fled to Costa Rica. Well, I mean, she got pissed off and she left. She probably doesn't want to be under the same roof with Tom Brady. And maybe there's a sense of okay, if you're not going to quit, I'm just going to leave you with the kids for a while because I'm tired. Because apparently she feels like she has been the one who has had to keep the home fires burning, while Tom Brady is basically always doing his own thing. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. But anyway, the point is, these two have done interviews over the years. So even discounting the secondhand stuff that we're getting about them in the press, just going by what they've said, it's in interviews I've read, interviews I've seen, it's plenty enough indication what's going on. And Tom Brady, Tom Brady's father said in an interview several years ago that Tom Brady's life, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that Tommy's life, as he put it, Tommy's life was bound to end in a kind of a tragedy, in a tragic sense, in that he says, quote, Tommy wants to play till he's 80. And he's not going to be able to do that. And tragedy in the sense, not of like, Greek tragedy, like tear your eyes out and die tragedy, but tragedy in the sense that even Tom Brady's dad knows that Tom Brady has a very painful end coming. Because apparently Tom loves football. Tom is addicted to football. Let's just say that, okay? And where do I get that? Well, Tom himself has said it. Tom Brady has said, and you can look it up in at least one interview that I've read, that he's addicted to football. And his wife, Gisele, said in a separate interview that she had never, get this is a direct quote, I'm not paraphrasing, that she had never known anybody who loved anything as much as Tom loves football. She's met a lot of people. She's been around the world, living that A-list life, and she's never met anyone who loves anything as much as football. And then she said also in an interview that Tom loves football more than her. Now, people shrug that off as like a joke. I'm not sure that's a joke, actually. And Tom Brady has said before also in an interview, oh, here's my cat again. Okay, shh. Tom Brady has said before in an interview that I read, he said that he gets, now I am paraphrasing, but he gets a kind of an existential fulfillment and satisfaction out of football. The way that he described it, the way that he described what it does to him, what it feels like, he said that when he's out on the field, it's the only time that he feels like he can be himself. Now, I don't understand exactly what that means, except maybe it signifies a kind of a full release of the id. Civilized life really sucks in a lot of ways. Yes, it has tremendous benefits, and I'm so glad that, women aren't having to go through, what a number of them went through in childbirth, and we have antibiotics, and we have a lot of great stuff, right? But civilized life, as Freud understood, it's very, very repressive. And we have these wild animal selves that are still within us that we have barely evolved out of, or not really even evolved out of. And civilization requires, and this is just basic Freud, but civilization requires that we suppress that animal self. And I'm not just talking about sex or violence, I'm just talking about the whole gamut of that primal nature that is still within us and that is basically strangled by civilized life and the requirements and restrictions and prohibitions of civilized life. There are very few times when we get to just like let go. And that's what Tom Brady says. He says that when he's out on the field, you can look up this interview, he said that when he's out on the field, that he feels like he can just finally like be. That's a really powerful feeling, and I'm pretty sure that's not what I would feel if I played football. I'm pretty sure if I played football, the feeling that I would have would be a pervasive sense of like mortal terror. But it does it. That's what does it for Tom. That's Tom's crack. Everybody's got crack. Everybody's got their crack. Now, for some people, unfortunately, their crack is worse than other people's crack, right? Like if your crack is really crack, then that's a bigger problem than if your crack is like, oh, I like to watch soap operas or something, right? But but some people, their crack is work. And I think that Tom Brady has the qualities of a workaholic, combined with whatever kind of existential, physiological, psychological thing is going out there on the football field. And it's not just that, of course. It's the thrill of winning. I'm sure that every Sunday, every game, you feel really juiced up, right? There's that surge of adrenaline. It's like going to war. And if you've seen Apocalypse Now, put in a plug for that since it's my favorite movie and it's where I get my name, Colonel Kurtz. If you've seen Apocalypse Now, the opening scene, Martin Sheen, he's sleeping with the gun under his pillow and he's on a bender and he's fucking miserable. And what does he say? He says, whenever I'm in the jungle, when I'm at war, all I can think of is getting back home. But when I get back home, all I can think of is getting back into the jungle because being at home is boring. And let's just be honest about that. Probably one reason Tom Brady doesn't want to go spend a lot of time at home with Gisele and the kids, it's probably kind of boring. And I say that, I'm not trying to be snarky because I don't have kids. I don't have kids, but I'm just saying come on, parents. A lot of your time is spent, even when you love your kids and everything, doing a lot of boring shit. And Tom Brady probably has the feeling too that look, Gisele, you and I have earned all this money And we can hire a team of, we can hire like a fleet of nannies or whatever to take care of these kids. And we can hire, you know, we've got maids to take care of the house. What are you having to really do at home, Gisele? You don't have to cook. You don't have to clean. You don't have to chauffeur your kids to school. It's great if you want to do that. You don't have to do it, right? So I understand from Tom Brady's perspective, he might be a kind of a befuddled, like, look, we're living this hyper-privileged lifestyle. We have all this money. Let's put it to use so that we can do whatever we want to do. Why do I have to be at home with you? Do I need to be like helping you take out the trash or whatever? To which I would imagine Gisele would say, hey, it doesn't matter how much money we have. Our kids still need their dad. And we still need a dad here to like make memories with. And guess what? I still need a husband, you know? I married you thinking, my God, how long can he play football? Well, the longest that anyone plays football is to their early 40s. So, you know, so he's a workaholic. It's going to end when he hits 40, right? When it hits 45, surely, right? So, you know, this is how people slip into problems in marriage. They are whatever relationships, right? And they start out on the same page, or they start off with this vision of how they think things are going to go, right? Like Gisele thinking, well, there's no way he's going to play past 40. This crazy game where he's constantly getting knocked around. Although I hear from Tom Brady haters that one of the reasons Tom Brady has done so well is that he's always protected and he doesn't get knocked around very much. Tell me if that's true or not, because like I said, I don't really follow things. And that was a New York Giants fan who was telling me that, who fucking hates Tom Brady with a passion. Hates. I gave her a Tom Brady book for a gift one time. It was the book that Tom Brady did with his trainer Alex Guerrero, his controversial trainer. It was the TB12 method, right? I can't remember. A lot of it's good health advice, but then there's some weird stuff about pliability, and then you don't eat tomatoes or something. But anyway, I gave her this book. So like every other page in this Tom Brady exercise book or whatever, or fitness book, is Tom. It's like these like huge photos of Tom doing all these workout moves. So like there's one where he's like stretching his arm and he's like, you know. So I gave that to her. She thought that was funny, I guess. All right. So anyway, where was I going with all of that? Yeah. So, you know, different expectations. Gisele probably thought the clock was going to run out way earlier than it has. She didn't realize that she was literally marrying Superman. So, and look, Tom Brady, I get his perspective. Like I said at the beginning, he's doing something extraordinary. Now, look, I understand football itself is utterly meaningless, right? But then again, everything in life is utterly meaningless. There is, you know, I saw some people online critiquing Tom Brady, and they were saying, look, your kids are so much more important than football. Says you. That may be the most controversial thing that's come out of my mouth. But, you know, if Tom Brady feels existentially free on the football field and he feels weighed down by his children, like that's just not something that we just automatically like just shrug off. Like, oh, well, you know, suck it up, dude. I mean, that's a legitimate thing. If he is so miserable, he retired. They were already like auctioning off his shit. Some poor loser paid way too much for Tom Brady's last football at an auction. But Tom Brady was miserable. He is addicted to football. And so this has to be dealt with. Gisele she can't just like stomp her foot and freak out. Well, I guess she can. I mean, she can do whatever she wants, right? And if she's not happy anymore, she can leave. You know, unfortunately, the people who end up suffering in these scenarios are the children, right? And it's not anybody's fault necessarily. It's just, and I mean suffering like their parents are fighting, right? So anyway, now, it does seem like, you know, football season, it's not like the entire season. But then again, I guess when you're at the level of playing pro, at the level that Tom Brady is at, like even when you're not playing or practicing, you're still like basically in training. And one of the things that Tom Brady said in a recent interview, I think this is the one he did with Howard Stern, he said that Gisele really resented the fact that when football season ended, Tom Brady would then move on to his other projects, right? Well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I've got this business venture, I've got the TB12 thing with Alex Guerrero and all of that. And Gisele is like, okay, but I have dreams too, I have goals too. So it's a thorny thing. And I did a philosophy video several months ago and a lot of people really liked it, but it was called What Do You Owe Yourself and What Do You Owe Others? Or what do we owe ourselves and what do you owe others? And the question is, to what degree in life are we expected to give up what we want for other people? Now, I brought up the thing about children earlier. I want to go back to that because some of you are probably still like shaking your head like, did she just say that football is perhaps just as meaningful as children? Well, what I was trying to say was, Tom Brady, if he feels like existentially free on the football field, if that in some way is like his yoga or his Zen or whatever, I mean, who am I to say which is, it's not my place to say which is better, or which is, I shouldn't say better. It's not my place to say what he should do with his life. And I would think surely there's some way that Tom Brady's desire to keep playing football and Gisele's desire to do her own thing, and then their mutual desire to have, parents engaged with the children, it seems like there's some way that could be worked out, but maybe not. Maybe it is just too much, it's just too much. I don't know. But, the thing that I said about children, it's very interesting because so there's a philosopher named Edelman, I think is his name. I don't know. And you can look it up, and he wrote a book about, it was a theoretical book about homosexuality. He's gay. Maybe his name was Lee Edelman. Anyway, he's gay. He is a philosopher. He wrote this book about being gay, and it was called No Future. And this is interesting. This was the premise of the book. And of course, I know now, when this book was written, it was less common for gay people, particularly gay men, to have children. Nowadays, we've got gay marriage and you've got families with gay parents and whatever. But it used to be in the past, even in the 90s, that being gay, particularly being a gay man, was kind of a signifier that you were not going to have a family, right? And you were not going to have children, I should say. And so anyway, so this gay writer who was really interested in philosophy, he wrote this book called No Future. And one of the theses or the premises of the book was the idea that one of the reasons why homosexuality unsettles people is because it sort of exposes the lie that we tell ourselves that having children gives our lives some kind of ultimate meaning. In other words, like seeing people who, in the past, let's say gay men who didn't have children, as kind of like repudiating the sense of meaning that we all imbue, that we all give to this idea of reproduction. Now, of course, I know there are going to be some people who say, well, it's not about what Tom Brady finds most fulfilling. It's about the fact that his children are just more objectively meaningful than football. Well, again, according to what standard? That's what the writer of No Future was trying to say, is that we are so threatened by the idea that having children, procreating, which actually is a very basic and sort of fundamental and obvious mechanism that like we share with even the most basic of animals. But anyway, that procreation may not be this end all of meaning that people like to think it is, that people tell themselves it is, right? Think of the fact that one's children, and I'm not trying to be depressing, but one's children will one day die, and 100 years after that, no one's going to even remember that person. Every generation has, if they're lucky, about 100 years of relevance to anyone. And then after that, they're completely forgotten. And you have, yes, a small percentage of people throughout history who achieve historical recognition for doing incredible things. It's probably not going to be many people's children, though. And there's something kind of pompous and narcissistic about the idea that your child is going to be the one who's going to be indispensable to humanity. Like people, that's the argument. I never get that argument really about abortion, the pro-life argument. Well, that person could be aborting the next Marie Curie or the next Elon Musk. Yeah, or maybe they're aborting a mass murderer, or maybe they're aborting someone who's going to prevent the next Marie Curie or Elon Musk from achieving all that they might have been. Maybe, it's the next Amber Heard. Anyway, my point is that I just don't buy that line of reasoning, right? And to me, people have to recognize that there is something incredibly narcissistic about the love of a parent for a child, even at the same time that it is incredibly selfless and beautiful. It is both. And so my point is not that Tom Brady should care about football more than his kids. That's not my determination to make. My point is that it's very easy for people to sit on the sidelines and say that other people should be spending more time with their children, or that, or what is meaningful or what is not. But we ultimately don't know any of these things, ultimately. And so anyway, and so here's what I'm saying about that. You know, if you look at the book of Ecclesiastes, let's go with something that maybe some people are more familiar with. Look at your Bible. Go read the book of Ecclesiastes. It is the most depressing, I've talked about it before, it is the most depressing, probably one of the most depressing things you could read, because the premise of the book of Ecclesiastes is that everything in life is utterly meaningless. And that really all you can do at the end of the day is sort of throw up your hands and say, God, I have some faith that that you're there and there's some ultimate purpose to this. But all you can do is really shrug your shoulders and do what you think God wants you to do, because really everything in life just seems futile. That's the premise of a book in the Bible. Anyway, it talks about children, and this is what it says. It says, the writer is ticking through all the things that we think gives life meaning, and he's talking about how all of them are meaningless. So he says, you know, if you think money gives your life meaning, well, you die and you lose it. Means nothing, and then it goes to somebody you may not even like, who then spends it on something you don't even care about. Or you think pleasure gives your life meaning. Well, you get tired of pleasure. And he ticks through every single thing. He says, you know, he's done all of these things in life, and he's seen to the vanity of it all. All is vanity. All is vanity. That covers having children too. And there's this, so anyway, but one of the things he says, and basically, to paraphrase, so you think, you know, having kids gives your life meaning? Well, your kids are going to leave you, or your kids are going to shame you, or they're going to do something that you don't approve of, or they're going to go their own way with their life, and, you know, or they're going to spend your money after you die, or what, I can't even remember. But it's basically talks about how you really think having kids gives your life meaning. Now, I'm not saying I believe that. I don't know what I believe, and I don't have children, so I'm probably not qualified to speak on this. But my point that I'm trying to circle back to is I don't like the idea of that, and this is controversial, and some of you can argue with me in the comments, but I don't like the idea that every existential or marital disagreement that involves children always has to be decided based on the idea that the children are just always the top priority of everything. And if Tom Brady does not enjoy being around the kids a lot and really enjoys playing football, then I would think that some kind of accommodation could be made to where he could do both. But if it cannot, then that is a real existential quandary. And I feel sorry for them, Tom and Gisele. And this is a perfect example of how you can have a ton of money and you can be very successful and you can still be miserable, because I'm sure they're not happy right now. And Tom Brady, you know, as some of you know, he missed the 11 days of practice with his team, which is a big deal. And he was asked about it, and basically he said, yeah, I've got some stuff going on. Well, it turns out the stuff that he's got going on is a huge fight with his wife, and his wife leaving, and, you know, this huge rift over whether he continues to play football. So I don't know. That is a tough one. If they can truly not work out an accommodation where everybody can be sort of happy, right? Or where Tom can play football, but then when he's not playing football and when he's not practicing, he can be a Mr. Mom, as they used to say in the 80s, right? I know that's sexist. Okay. It's still kind of a funny movie if you've ever seen it. Then I guess I wonder, you know, and I wonder too, let me just say this, since I said that shocking thing suggesting that perhaps football is as meaningful to Tom Brady or more than having children, let me back up a little bit. It's also entirely likely that Tom has an addiction problem. And he himself has said that he is addicted to football. And there is a very fine line in life, especially when we talk about workaholics. There is a very, and I don't know that that's an actual diagnosis, okay? I'm not saying that's in the DSM, a workaholic, but we know people who are, for all intents and purposes, addicted to work. And it is a very fine line when it comes to something like workaholism, or someone who is addicted to a sport that has made them many millions of dollars and made them very successful. There's a very fine line between what's healthy and what's not healthy. And it perhaps, I guess Gisele maybe already knows this, and maybe this is her attempt almost at a kind of an intervention or something, but perhaps Tom needs some kind of help dealing with whatever issues he has that he cannot deal with except out on the football field. And, you know, every addict, every addictive behavior is a coping mechanism also. And that's why, you know, we don't need to shame people who have addictions, because I guarantee you that if there's someone in your life who's got some kind of an addiction, they're not loving it, they're not happy, right? But it is the best and only coping mechanism that they've found up till that point that works. Now, you yourself might think that you have better coping mechanisms. Well, if they would just, you know, start exercising, start going to the gym, and start motivating, and start meditating, and start going to church, then they wouldn't need to do that substance. Well, it says you. You know, a lot of people have tried those things, and they're still doing the substances. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying, though, is I wonder if Tom has come to the point where he has faced the fact that maybe the surge or the rush or the existential feeling that he gets from playing football, if maybe there are ways, if he got therapy, or I don't know, if he was just kind of open to the universe about other possibilities. If maybe there are other ways he could find some semblance of that feeling that he's looking for. Because he will eventually have to find something else. And his father was very right when his father said that Tom wanting to play until he's 80 is not practical, okay? Unless, you know, they come up with some great anti-aging, you know, start taking the rapamycin or whatever. He can't play till he's 80. So at some point there is a day of reckoning. And I guess that's what I would say. I don't know if Tom Brady's day of reckoning is very near, or maybe it's several years down the road. But he really, if he can't leave football now, he should, though, psychologically, and maybe he shouldn't leave football now. But if he can't or won't or shouldn't, he should try to psychologically prepare for the day that he does have to. But until then, it's a very difficult marital quandary, because, you know, like I said, I did a video a while back in which I talked about the importance of living according to your own life narrative and not having someone else dictate to you what you should be doing with your life, right? No one else has the right to tell me what my most meaningful life is, or how I should allocate my time, or what my priorities should be. But the problem is, when you enter into a marriage, especially if certain promises were made by Tom, or certain representations that he was going to quit at a certain age and he didn't quit, that's a different realm. Because when people commit to a marriage, first of all, they are committing to a certain restriction of their freedom. And you know, it's a shame that people only think of that restriction in terms of sexual restriction, because there's a lot of other restrictions embedded in it. And those of you who are married know that, spoken and unspoken. And things that develop over time that you didn't even foresee when you were first courting, right? Or dating, or when you first got married even, right? And so how to preserve your own individual autonomy, or your own precious existential sense of self-determination and fulfillment, and self-fulfillment and fulfillment according to your own vision of life, how to do that when it is in direct contradiction to that of your partner. And I don't know, folks, that's why I'm not married. All right, on that note, if you enjoyed this, you know, like, subscribe, always accept tips and PayPal, Patreon, all that stuff. And I have got more stuff coming out soon. So happy Labor Day, everybody. Bye-bye.